Hello everyone, this is Destroyer, and I finally decided to get around to doing my mouse overview. So as you can see, I've already taken the screw apart just so it'll be easier, and I don't have to fumble with that because I am filming this on my phone. I don't have a good webcam. So let's wait for our scale to settle down, and go ahead and weigh it. It's about 54 grams without the cable. With a little bit of cable it adds some weight, but as you can see it's pretty light. So first of all, I've paracorded this, so I'll go ahead and pull the top off. If I can do this with one hand. There we go. You can see I just went ahead and used the original wires. I just cut the ends off, which was kind of necessary to get the wire coverings off. And then not much else done to the inside. As you can see here on the sides, if we can get it to focus, I stippled the sides. And that was basically done by pressing ever so gently a hot soldering iron into it over and over again. So this is the, I should back up here a second. This is the Abyssus V2. So first thing I had to do is I had to peel off the rubberized sides. There were some rubber sides in here, and you can kind of see the edge where that used to be. And this lip used to go all the way around the front. So I went ahead and cut that off on the top. I just dremeled it off, filed it off. And then I stippled the sides, and then around the base you can kind of see how it's a bit glossy. I brought that down a bit too, and then to polish it off I used steel wool, and then I went over it with a little bit of acetone, and acetone will eat ABS, so you have to be very careful you don't go with too much if you're going to do something like that. But it also, because it basically kind of like melts it, you end up with a super smooth glossy finish. And then flipping it over to the bottom, I went to town with this with Dremel. So first I made rough cuts, and then I took a file and filed as I got close to the edges, because I wanted to try and get it as clean as possible. And this brought down, I don't know, maybe 6 grams or something like that. It wasn't a ton of weight, but combined with everything else, it ended up taking out a fair amount. And then as you can kind of see around the edges where it looks kind of shiny, that is not paint, that is acetone. I just took a Q-tip, and after I filed the edges as best I could, I took a Q-tip and kind of went over them with acetone, and again made that super smooth, so that way it wouldn't catch on anything and we wouldn't get any of the file marks gripping on the mouse pad. And I cut a hole in the back, so this is the only screw that you need to take off the top of the Abyssus, so I just cut that out of my mouse foot, so that way I wouldn't have to keep on prying at the edge and taking it off. And then most of the weight reduction, so I got a fair bit off the sides just by taking off the rubber parts, and then going around the edges, taking off the bottom. All that together added up to a fair amount, but I think most of the gain came from taking it out of the structure. Now, this is actually a two-piece shell. The white part that you can see is the inside of the top, and I'm not going to take this off because it's got these let's see if I can get a better view here. It's got these little clips right here and right here, and as you can see I broke off one of them. They're pretty fragile, and I took this off and put it back on a bunch of times, and it's it's quite difficult to get on and off without breaking those. So I broke one off, so I don't want to take it off anymore. But I just went to town with there. You can see like this white part here. That used to be a full cone. It was for the LED to kind of guide the light up towards the Razer logo up here on the top. So I cut most of that out. There were a bunch of supports that extended down to touch the base of the mouse to kind of give it support from the top, and I cut those out. Cut out a ton of stuff. There was like another bar that went around here and a bunch of extra ridges and stuff. Let's see, maybe I should use this. There was a bar here and a bunch of extra ridges that provided extra support. I cut out a bunch of weight here. The one thing that I do regret that I went too far on is right here. You can see on the, I'm looking at what I'm doing here in real life and Just holding the camera. Sorry about that. You can see right here, there's like the little columns or whatever that stick down, and these depress the buttons. Well, on the inside of that, let me see if I can get it. I don't think you can really. Yeah, you can kind of see it. On the inside of that, there's a little lip, and on that lip, there was a piece on the body here that hooked into there and prevented them from going up too far. So basically, it would keep it locked down. And I went ahead and removed those. That is one thing that I regret doing. So now it's not bad, like when your finger's resting on it, but if you come off the button really quickly, then it'll kind of feel like it'll come up higher than it should have, because this top shell, as you can see, is like super thin, and it's very flexible. So I do wish that I had kept that in there, and they were a little more captivated by the structural component of the top, and so they weren't and so they wouldn't feel as loose. There's probably a little more that I could do here, like maybe some more in here that I could take off. There is a retaining clip right here, so I didn't want to get too close. All in all, this was the first time I've done a mod like this, so I didn't want to go too crazy with it. Granted, some people will probably think that I'm somewhat crazy for doing what I did. But anyway, yeah, so that's what I did on the inside. Everything still works as it did when I got it, so I haven't lost any functionality. Structurally, it still feels really secure. These sidewalls are still really strong. The top, like I said, is very thin, but it still has enough support from this like inner shell that or inner skeleton or whatever that makes it feel very solid. I don't really have any problems aside from the fact that, like I said, you can lift up the front, and that does feel a little wobbly and loose when it's all put together. Aside from that, I really like this mouse. It's allowed me to transition from a palm/fingertip hybrid that I was using with my my G Pro, and because I don't know, it's just like the size of the hump or the weight or something. I think my main complaint about the G Pro is the curved sides. I can't really get a good fingertip grip. If I try and hold it with just my fingers, I feel like my pinky's constantly falling off and I can't get a good grip with it. Whereas with this one, it's much better. Partially maybe because of the stippling, but also the shape is really good. I really like the shape. The only thing I wish it wasn't quite so big and flared in the back. But I don't know. That's not too bad. Other problems with it, I think I had 2 more complaints. I can't remember them both right now. One of them was the DPI button. For some reason, it's really weird. Whenever I switch DPI, it ends up changing the DPI to it's either inconsistent. It's kind of hard to describe, but basically, it feels like super sensitive sometimes, and other times it feels normal. Unless I'm running the software. If I open up the Razer Synapse software, then it seems to be fine. And admittedly, I don't use the DPI button very much. I pretty much have it set to 400 and 1600 DPI, and I only use that for when I'm playing games like Halo 2, or that's Halo 2 Project Cartographer, or like Borderlands or something, basically console ports where your sensitivity can't go low enough. I prefer to run everything at 1600 DPI because, well, it's kind of a long story. Anyway, I used to, I had a higher DPI for when I used a higher resolution monitor, and never bothered to switch it back when I got a lower resolution 240 hertz monitor. So that's kind of wonky, but that can be fixed, like I said, just by opening the software. It's just annoying. And then there's one other issue, but the lift-off distance. The lift-off distance is really high, and that was a real pain to adjust to initially. But I finally got the hang of it, and I don't really notice it. The one other thing that still kind of has me trying to figure out what to do is I lost side buttons with this mouse. With the G Pro wired has side buttons, and I moved over to the Abyssus, which doesn't have side buttons. That was a conscious choice, and I decided to do that because I felt that there was that using side buttons on a mouse introduces inconsistency, because if you're using a fingertip grip, at least in my experience, when I use a fingertip grip, because I'm basically supporting it between my pinky and my ring and my thumb. If I'm going to use my thumb, if I'm going to use my mouse buttons, I have to move my thumb, which causes me to have to shift my grip and somewhat lose control of the mouse. So I kind of decided to just forego those, so that way I wouldn't have that problem. Whether or not that's actually amounted to any gain, I can't say. You know, whether that small inconsistency really matters. I have been working with different games and trying to figure out new keybinds, and so that's presented a bit of difficulty. So I don't know if I'll end up going back to the side buttons, or some other mouse that has side buttons or not. Originally, I thought maybe I could mod them into this. I don't know if I'll go that far. I may or may not. I guess that time will tell whether or not I end up missing them enough. But that's about it. So that's my gaming mouse, and that's what I use at home. I still use a G403 at work, although since using this mouse, that thing is starting to feel super big and heavy. So I don't know if I'll switch that out or not. But this mouse has really converted me to a fingertip grip, and I love it. I never thought I could make the switch. It just never felt right with other mice, and it feels really good. And I feel like I have more control now with this mouse and the fingertip grip. So anyway, yeah, that's an overview of my mouse, and I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Thanks for tuning in.